In Other News is made possible with the financial support of Ariel Investments and John Rogers and generous Chicagoans like you. Thank you.
Truth, fun, blackness. Those are the pillars of this broadcast. I'm your host, Robin Robinson. In Other News, we try to dig deeper into the stories, events, history, and people impacting our communities. The current state of public storytelling, journalism, media, whatever you want to call it, it's in a crisis. Screaming headlines tap into our fears, the actual truth buried somewhere beneath layers of sensationalism. We are bombarded daily with stories designed not to inform, but to entertain or get us excited. Better yet, piss us off or scare the crap out of us. Headlines are the bait to make us click, only to find fragments of half-truths wrapped in emotional triggers. We scroll, we click, we share, but do we really know what we're absorbing? Do we understand the stories behind the stories? Or sometimes the hidden agendas? It is a dangerous trend, in my opinion. It threatens our understanding of the world and our ability to make informed decisions. When so-called news isn't about truth anymore, misinformation, even disinformation, spreads faster than facts. Awareness might be one way to try to set the record straight. Stop rewarding the purveyors of perverted information. To help us think about how to cut through the noise and see the difference between headlines and the real story, we're going to be joined by someone who has spent his career navigating this very dilemma. Dometi Pongo is an accomplished investigative journalist and compelling storyteller. He's a presence on several platforms: MTV's True Life Crime, the 48 Hours CBS podcast Candyman. Dometi has a unique and moving way of presenting the facts and keeping the audience engaged without trickery. He knows firsthand the shifting media landscape and remains committed to the core values of journalism: integrity, accuracy, accountability. Let's talk about what you can do to be better served by the information industry with one of my favorite young geniuses, Dometi Pongo, right after this short break.
Hi, I'm Bianca Cotton. Join me Mondays at 7 p.m. as I sit in conversation with incredible, dynamic, and complex Chicagoans who peel back the layers, living lessons, the joy, and the pain behind their confident smiles. Join the conversation Mondays at 7 p.m. on CanTV Cable Channel 19 and streaming on cantv.org and CanTV Plus app.
He has found a way to stop picking soundbite cotton on the video plantation. That's a little joke among black journalists in corporate-owned broadcasting. Dometi Pongo manages to work with those entities instead of just for them. Welcome to In Other News. I'm so happy to have a friend of mine join us today. As soon as I saw you on a national platform, I knew it, because when I first met you years ago, Dometi, I said, this is a talented young man. How are you?
I'm well. I'm so proud to be on this platform. And I remember the exact words you said. You said, a rising star in the communications universe. And you said it before I even knew it was fully true. So it's an honor to be here and to have your advocacy. Thank you. Thank you for this conversation.
You're welcome. And I know it's an impolite question because at the time that I said that to you, you were a baby, because you're not that grown yet, right? You're like your mid-30s. So that you were early 20s getting into this business. That's
right. You know, I ain't no spring chicken no more, but I'm still learning every single day. And I think the industry has changed so much. Even from then, I was learning at that time. And as soon as you learn something, as you know, another thing changes and you have to evolve your approach to storytelling, while at the same time staying true to those tenets that you talked about in the cold open, to make sure that we are maintaining that integrity, that accountability, while still finding ways to edutain folks without compromising the facts behind the stories we're telling, which can be a bit of a song and dance, but we're navigating it.
You said edutain?
Edutain. That's right where we are right now.
Okay. Educate you in an entertaining way.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it really was, in working with MTV, that was the way to get young people engaged in the stories. But once we hook them, what are we telling them? You know what I'm saying?
You started out in Chicago, and I actually remember you being at WVON, our legendary Black-owned, Black-oriented radio station. VON now stands for Voice of the Nation, but we started out Voice of the Negro. Okay, but you were there as the news director. You were on the streets. There was probably I call it the heyday of news on WVON because you were hustling. How did starting out in Chicago impact the way that you go about your journalism?
Well, as you know, Chicago is such a political town, and we always have things happening in the underbelly of the city and on the main stage at the same time. And usually the real story, by the time the ordinances are written or the things that get down to Springfield happen, it has already been protested, talked about in community meetings in Chicago. And, I didn't go to journalism school. I kind of learned, I went to a broadcasting school called Illinois Media School. Back then it was called Illinois Center for Broadcasting. And early on, I really had this chip on my shoulder to prove to myself and to the audience that I knew what I was talking about, that I cared about the community I was reporting on, and cutting my teeth in that way. What I learned from navigating the city was how important those community connections, real life connections are, because a lot of my friends became some of those purveyors of truth that we talk about, and they would give me stories they wouldn't give other folks. But it was also like that was my education, and VON simultaneously provided me a platform to educate myself on how to do this thing. And it gave me the confidence when I went out into bigger spaces to know how to make connections quickly, who to talk to, and my BS meter is off the charts because you get some street smarts, coming up and growing up in Chicago and working in this space. You
really do. What part of town did you grow up in?
On the southeast side of the city, in a Woodline area, Woodline South Shore border, around 69th and Stony Island. And in grade school, went to TF North in Calumet City, Illinois. And once I graduated college, I came back and moved right in the same neighborhood house that I grew up in.
Well, you're a real Chicagoan.
Yeah, through and through. South side, south suburbs, Chicagoan. Yes, sir.
So you went from VON to WGN, is that right?
That's right.
Big superstation here, and just started doing work that started to be recognized. You were being nominated for, Lissager Awards and NAACP awards, and I mean, Black Journal. You were really making waves. Did you feel like the people who hired you were like almost amazed that you were as good as you were?
That's a great question. I think I have been blessed with favor, and I believe I manifested a certain type of favor. I've always been irritated by folks in our culture who say, I want to thank my haters. I want to prove the haters wrong. I never wanted to prove haters wrong. I wanted to prove the people who believed in me right. And I got the job at WGN Radio because I was speaking on a panel at the Publicity Club of Chicago, and it was all radio news directors. And it was, and that was one of my cheat codes. I would sit on these panels, but I wasn't really in that space. I was listening more than I was talking, so I was learning, taking notes as a panelist, while at the same time sharing the little bit that I was learning in real time. And another panelist worked for WGN Radio and said, I just love the way you spoke. You were I didn't even realize this until she told me. I was the youngest person on the panel, less than half the age of everyone else who was there, and I was the only Black man on the panel. She said, you were able to stand out. You taught us things that we didn't know about, how the industry is changing. I would love for you to meet my bosses. What I didn't know was that meeting was a job interview. I went for lunch and coffee with Todd, who used to be at WGN Radio, and with Steph, and we just talked about the state of the industry. And about a month later, they called me back and said, hey, would you like to work with us on Saturdays? I'm like, absolutely. And started getting reps there, eventually left WVON. I worked at both stations for a while, which was tricky.
I remember.
Yeah, you'll accidentally say the wrong call letters on the wrong station. But it was a time where I really accelerated my learning because I knew I had this learning curve. And if I wanted to navigate the third largest market, I was going to have to learn at a faster clip than those who, were already ahead of me by being more experienced or having gone to J school.
Or have been coming from a smaller market. So you basically pieced together 2 part-time jobs into a good full-time job.
Hello.
But you also you're as a commodity, right? You're good looking, you're young, you're black, you're smart, you're a great storyteller. You are not afraid to go out there and get the real story, and can talk with anyone. Did that make it easy? Did you just kind of after that just got to pick and choose your jobs, or did you have a time where you said, "Ooh, maybe I'm not going to make it in this business"?
I wish it did make it easy. I really had a moment where, when I was living, on 68th and Harper, I was thinking, okay, I'm not going to buy any new furniture. I'm not going to settle in this place because I know I'm going to get a top job here in this city, and I don't want to hunker down yet. So, I waited and waited, and I was applying for jobs, and I would speak on these panels, and just to make ends meet, I would, fill in and host a gala here, host a workshop there. I was getting some award nominations, but then I had this season where I was getting more nominations than actual wins.
And neither one of them pay, by the way.
And neither one of them pay. Yeah. When you get your first couple, it's like, okay, I belong here. When you get the next few, you're like, I'm very grateful. This work matters. And then after a minute, it's like, all right, this ain't increasing my paycheck. So, what? How do I make the rubber meet the road? And eventually, I started applying at different spaces, different local stations in the city. And I would always have these great conversations where they would say, I had this, I had that, but somebody else was better equipped from the job because maybe they had that particular experience because they came from another market. And spiritually, that blessing was just for those people. What I found, it was such a blessing for me as well, because had I been a part of a contract at any of those spaces, I would have never gotten the MTV job. I shot a pilot for MTV's True Life Crime in February of 2018. And it was an airable pilot, but I never thought it would actually air. It wasn't until December of that year that they told me that they were planning to air the pilot, and it never actually aired until 2020.
Wow.
And so had I been under contract, wouldn't have been able to do any of those things. I ended up moving to New York in 2019 or the end of 2018 and getting that job. But it was a very rough go of it for a time. And I remember the moment that I kind of started to give up. I looked at my old drapes from the previous tenants at the apartment, and I said, man, I might as well just switch these, get a new couch. I'm going to be here for a minute. We'll figure it out. And I was really content with where I was. It wasn't so much sadness and somberness as it was contentment. And it was almost like, I kid you not, maybe the next day or the day after, a friend of mine by the name of Chance Smith, a videographer who worked at Ebony at the time, said that MTV was scouting for a host for a new true crime doc, and they wanted someone who had the, investigative prowess, but at the same time was young, could connect with an audience, and, look good outside of a suit. And, right. I had a conversation with those folks, and that became True Life Crime and MTV News.
Wow. And True Life Crime, that experience, you had to bring a real authenticity. Otherwise, it's just, the horrors of life right there in the box. I don't know if I could have done that, right? It's like reliving, actual, terrible things. But you did it with a purpose. One of your stories was actually a Chicago-based crime, a mystery that is yet to really be solved. And how did that impact you doing that, episode after episode? You needed 18 episodes over 2 seasons.
Working with True Life Crime helped me to figure out what my purpose was in this space, because, it's easy within any profession to go through the motions of doing the job after a certain point. And you learn a lot about yourself as a journalist, because I had to figure out what kind of journalist I wanted to be. When those job opportunities weren't necessarily coming, I started to think, maybe I should have, Americanized my name. Maybe that's what's not working. Or maybe I should, I was moonlighting and hosting, poetry open mic series called The Artist Lounge at the Southside Community Arts Center. And I said, well, maybe navigating these spaces and doing poems in these informal settings, I don't know if that's serving me or if that's making me more marketable. Maybe I should be a little more, hi, I'm Dometi Pongo, and this is the nightly news. Maybe that is what folks are looking for. And I'm like, and in radio, I was able to do that because you can change your voice. And, it's not until when you're doing the news report, they can't see you. So you can camouflage. And so I started to wonder, do I need to lose a bit of myself? And True Life Crime actually showed me the opposite. We want you because you're from this city and you understand. Because the showrunner of that show said, can you explain to me why the first story we did was Kanika Jenkins, who was found frozen to death in the walk-in freezer at the Rosemont Hotel, or at the hotel in Rosemont. And he said, can you explain to me why someone is looking at this, what seems to be an accidental death, and they're protesting police? And I said, yo, you got to understand, this happened right after Laquan McDonald. And I walked him through that history and I had just been in all these spaces just reporting on these. And I said, this is the general distrust of the medical examiner's office when they give us autopsies, because in police shootings, the autopsy will say something different than what our eyes told us when we saw the body cam footage. And we had these conversations and I said, oh, man, my lived experience is an additive to this story in a space where, journalists were taught to figure out that balance between using our lived experience to enhance our storytelling ability, but not get in front of the story, where True Life Crime really asked me to, yes, be a journalist, but also be a Chicagoan telling the story of other people. And it happened that a lot of folks don't know this. I wasn't supposed to host all 18 episodes of True Life Crime.
Oh.
I was actually supposed to only host the Chicago episode, and they were going to use local journalists in every market. But the connection that I had with the subjects, they said, no, we need to figure out how to do this for every city. And that's how I became the host for the 2 seasons.
And doing that story, the Kenneka Jenkins story, it ended kind of inconclusive. You concluded that it was an accident, but somehow you also honored those people that just couldn't accept that. You said, you know what you believe, what you feel is valid, but this is what I have determined for myself. Coming from you, because they know you are not trying to cover anything up, right? You are understanding, what the mistrust is, why people would say, why Black people would say, we don't believe it was an accident. We believe there is some wrongdoing here. How do you think that helped the audience?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking this question. I love it. I needed folks to know that our conspiracy theories are rooted in valid violence against Black people. These aren't some just kooks on the internet who are just coming up with things. These are people who, at the same time, saw Kendrick Johnson's body rolled up in the gym with his organs taken out of it, and folks in the gym mat, folks telling people that this was an accident. This is the same community that saw Henrietta Lacks's DNA used to cure cancer, to treat cancer and all these different illnesses with these HeLa cells that doctors have been using for decades without giving credit to the family, for free, with no compensation to her descendants or anything. That is not a conspiracy. These are things that happened. It's a Tuskegee experiment. You got all the way back to slavery. What the advances that we know about, women's bodies came from experimentation on Black women and mutilation of our bodies. All of that fed into the theories of, well, she's in this freezer. There's an organ transplant facility in this area. I wanted to make sure that when I said, based on what I can see, this is what I believe. I want you to know that I believe what I said, but I also believe in the history that has informed your suspicions. And I think it's so important because our suspicions are too often dismissed, and people think that we're coming up with these things out of thin air. And no, the theories made sense. It just, in my opinion, didn't apply to this case. And then lastly, one thing too is, as we're journalists, we're investigating, we're reading, we're looking into things, but we often have to rely on the information that we're given and what we're receiving. I didn't physically have an interview with the person who performed this autopsy. I'm reading the report. So, I don't often like to leave things open for interpretation, but I was still learning at the time. And I was like, well, I'm seeing everything that I'm seeing is telling me this, and I can't believe anything to the contrary. So this is what I'll say. But I don't know if 10 years from now, a new piece of information will come out, and then I have to hang my hat on a judgment that I made in the past that may have proven to be, led on false information. So that's one of the reasons I kind of left that open.
Well, it's one thing to make a mistake and then come back and say, you know what, upon further review or with new evidence or whatever, journalists are not perfect. But there is a group of people out there, self-described journalists, who they're not making mistakes. They're just doing whatever it takes to get you to watch, whatever it takes to get you to click, to share, to comment, or to make you not believe what you used to think was true, or to scare you about the others. Anybody who's not just like you. How do you see that growing? Is it just my imagination? Am I being paranoid? Do you see that growing, and what can we do about it?
Well, everything you're seeing is happening in real time. You ain't crazy.
Okay. Oh, good.
They are. There is this. But before I get to that, there's something you said earlier that's very important. The cult of personality has made it that when you say something online, we call it standing on business. You say something and you stand by your opinion. It is no longer cool to say, I got that wrong. My bad. Let me tell you what really happened. Or I now have new information. Let me change my ideas. No, people think that it's virtuous to get so firmly entrenched in what you believe that you stand even in the face of new information that we'll never grow as a society. The pursuit of knowledge, the definition of wisdom and knowledge is to change what you believe to be true when you're given new information. And now we're even beyond this space where people are just keeping their opinions and damning information that is contrary to what they see. Right. Now they're purposefully pumping this crap out that they know is untrue, either to get us riled up, to promote whatever agenda they have, or to placate whatever base that they're marketing to. And that is what's scary, because it's becoming more and more difficult to discern who is who. There was a time when the blue check could at least tell you that this person works for a vetted news organization or is someone of note. Now you can buy a blue check, create a fake account, post a meme with a headline in bold letters, and it will travel around the world faster than the truth can put his pants on. So that's what makes it so hard to do what we do, because often the truth can be a lot more boring than the lie. So it's very difficult. It's very difficult.
So if we want to be, entertained all the time, then we're going to lose the credible platforms that do it the other way, because you won't have the support. You won't have a constituency. Without an audience, it's hard for an entity to exist. So I guess I'm trying to ask you, what do you think people should be doing about this?
Number one, if you see a headline and the news story looks too audacious to be true, click on the page that has posted the content. Look in that bio. If it has 50 American flags and it says MAGA, that is probably coming from someone with an agenda. And you have accounts now, it's called blackfishing on the internet. It'll take the profile picture of somebody African American. It might even be an AI picture, and they'll pump out information that has facts that are designed to appeal to Black audiences. Our gift is our curse. Black folks are the highest indexing users of social media. Nielsen has done this study time and time again over several years and showed that we use social media the best. We create a lot of the social media trends. So a lot of these troll farms have found ways to market directly to us. So you might see a meme that has traveled around and then find out the page that initially posted that meme use that to gain credibility with Black audiences, to build its following, and then from there, they'll change the profile picture and spew out misinformation. So what do? Click on the platform, look in the link in the bio, and see if all of that matches what it is that's being posted. If there's a headline and there's no attribution to any news source, just copy and paste the headline, put it in Google, and see if it returns an actual news story from a valid news organization. Let's say you get on a news site and you're not sure if this is a valid news organization. Click the About page. If the About page is hard to find, big red flag. If you do find the About page, parody websites like The Onion will say this is a satirical website. So they often, there are big tells that let you know that these things are false. If there's a picture that is an artificial intelligence picture, look at the hands. If there's another little finger doing like this, that is not a real picture, because for whatever reason, as of yet, artificial intelligence hasn't figured out how to get human hands right. So those are some of the things that I look for off top to see if a news story is real.
If there's a picture of me naked, I promise it is artificial intelligence, okay? So the other thing that people can do besides looking out for the bad actors is to support the people like you who they can trust, right? It's really, consider the source is what we said, every day of our career, right? Because a lot of people tell us a lot of stuff that doesn't turn out to be valid. Consider the source. So once you've proven, as you have to be truth, right, that's relevant and how it's relevant to Black people, I think that, you deserve our support. And so I'm going to ask you one last quick question, which is, what are you doing now? And so what do we need to watch?
Watch and listen to, if you haven't seen True Life Crime, watch True Life Crime. It's on Paramount Plus. And, go through the episodes. It's 2 seasons of it. But right now, what I'm most excited about is the Chicago story that I tell on the 48-hour CBS podcast, Candyman, the true story behind the bathroom mirror murder. But yeah, and outside of that, I'm doing some fun things. I'll be hosting the red carpet at the Grammys for MTV.
It's your reward for your great work. And I do appreciate you. I appreciate you coming on, talking to us on our little broadcast. And I look forward to all the great things I know you're going to do in the future. We didn't talk about Ghana. I need an hour-long show, folks. Can everybody hear me over there? But
I will be back, and ain't nothing little about anything Robert Robinson does. And in other news, is hitting all the beats. I can't wait to come back if you'll have me back. And it's such a pleasure just catching up with you and talking about the things that matter most to us. I appreciate this.
All right, Dometi Pongo, one of Chicago's own that is making his mark in journalism on a national and international platform. So, and we'll talk about going to Ghana too, right? He's that's his homeland, and so we had a lot more to talk about, but not today. Love you. Bye-bye.
Love you back.
On the other side of the break, I'm back with this week's edition of Robin's Nest. Stay with us.
Every community has a story, a pulse, a voice waiting to be heard. At CAN TV, we bring these stories to life, from the heart of Chicago to your living room. Join us in supporting hyper-local television. Your backing helps us cover what matters directly in our communities, unfiltered and upfront. Help tell the important stories of our communities. Become a program underwriter today.
Got to thank again our guest Dometi Pongo for helping us all think about the power we have to create better media by being more aware of the information we consume. It's a topic that's been heating up in my nest for quite some time. As a journalist, as a daughter of a journalist, as the granddaughter of people who had to fight just for the right to read, let alone write. Maybe I'm overreacting to the credibility crisis. I actually do like the democratization of information. The internet and social media has given everyone a voice, turned the old one-way newscasts into potential conversations. It has certainly shined light on the creative genius in marginalized communities. Anybody can have a platform and be a storyteller, but not everybody cares about the pesky little requirements of journalism: fact-checking, source vetting, fairness, context. The new technology does leave us open to attacks on truth by people hiding behind keyboards with intentions ranging from making money to creating chaos. The most successful by the numbers are those that attract an audience by pandering to what that audience already believes. Liberals over here, conservatives over there, extremists behind door number 3, populate with content that reinforces their bias and watch the online community grow and grow apart from the others. The guardrails are down. People dropping F-bombs on platforms that once created space for robust but decent debate. AI-generated visuals mean you can no longer believe your lying eyes. To be fair, so-called mainstream media has also been about making money with news ever since they found out it could be popular enough to be profitable. I like to believe that being popular, winning the ratings, going viral can be a goal without being the driving force behind a real news operation. Optimistically, I think the younger audience, millennials on down to the alphas, may be more savvy about their consumption. They've grown up with the wild, wild west of cyberspace. They consume and create. They've heard the lies. Well, they've told some of the lies. But they've also unearthed and honored suppressed Black history, rediscovered James Baldwin and Gordon Parks, created whole new businesses and careers. A trendsetter is now an influencer and paid. News junkies wring our hands over the obsession with celebrity and fashion. Doesn't seem healthy. healthy. But that's nothing new. When attention turns to things like politics and justice, though, credible sources need to be available and viable. Being informed is being empowered. Trust in American mass media is pitiful. Only 31% of people surveyed in 2024 have a, quote, fair amount or great deal of trust. 39% have none at all. If we want the power, we'll have to demand and support media we can trust and believe. Until next time, truth, fun, blackness.